thanks for joining us on Chicago Tonight. I'm Brandis Friedman. Here's what we're looking at.
It's a human thing to do. It's a just thing to do. It's the right thing to do.
A phase out of the tipped minimum wage moves forward after Chicago City Council members failed to override Mayor Johnson's veto. Parents and students are caught in the middle as Chicago's Board of Education debates whether to cancel classes May 1st. We hear from both sides. Meanwhile, a fully elected school board is on its way to Chicago. What to know about how it'll work.
Think of the lock as an elevator.
And it's the gate between the Chicago River and Lake Michigan. We explain how the Chicago Harbor Lock works. First off tonight, a new watchdog report says 2 Chicago police sergeants and 4 officers failed to properly investigate a crash where a vehicle driven by a Chicago Fire Department employee struck and killed someone. In her last quarterly report as Inspector General, Deborah Witzberg's office doesn't conclude that the CPD members deliberately covered up the fatal crash. Rather, she found their actions prevented her office from conducting a complete investigation and potentially crucial information not being shared with CPD investigators. She says the officers failed to document proper statements from the driver, failed to ID or interview a witness, and several either turned off their body cameras or didn't activate them at all in violation of CPD policy. And on a programming note, Witzberg will join us on this program tomorrow evening. Cook County officials are extending their condolences to the family of late County Commissioner Dennis Deere, whose wife and son were found fatally shot Tuesday evening. Deere's wife, 51-year-old Barbara, and 23-year-old son, Caleb, were found at a home in Homan Square just before 6 p.m. Barbara was shot 3 times in the chest, Caleb once in the head. Dennis Deere died in 2024 at the age of 51, a year after his double lung transplant. In a statement, Cook County Board President Tony Preckwinkle says, quote, "The Deere family has long been well known in the community for their compassion and steadfast commitment to others. There are no words that can make sense of such pain, but I hope the surviving family members find strength in the love that surrounds them." Chicago has already shattered a nearly 80-year-old rainfall record, and more rain is on the way. The National Weather Service says there will be multiple waves of potentially severe storms this afternoon and tonight, meaning the potential for damaging winds, large hail, and flash flooding. Thunderstorms have already dumped nearly 2.5 inches of rain at O'Hare Airport. The previous record for yesterday, April 14th, was 1.21 inches. That was back in 1949. The Metropolitan Water Reclamation District has an overflow action day alert in place today, encouraging residents to limit household water use in order to increase capacity in combined sewer pipes for stormwater rather than wastewater. Coming up, where the city's tipped minimum wage stands after today's city council meeting, Heather Sharon breaks it down for us next.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by the Alexandra and John Nichols family, the Polk Brothers Foundation, and the support of these donors.
One of Mayor Brandon Johnson's major legislative accomplishments will stand. That is after Chicago City Council failed to override his veto, keeping the phase out of the tipped minimum wage on track. Let's listen to some of that debate before the vote.
It's harming Chicago. And so that's why we have to stand up today and do what's right instead of doing what's politically you think is correct.
Making sure that people can afford their rents and pay their bills and put food in their refrigerator is not a politically correct thing to do. It's a human thing to do. It's a just thing to do. It's the right thing to do.
And our Heather Sharon joins us now with more. Heather, what does today's vote mean for Chicago workers who earn tips?
Well, it means that they will get an 8% raise on July 1st. And as of now, that tipped minimum wage, which means that they earn about $3.50 less than other hourly workers in Chicago making the minimum wage, is on track to be phased out by July 2028, when everybody will have to pay the minimum wage, which is right now $16.60, but will rise with inflation over the next couple of years.
The mayor appeared to relish this fight. Why? What do we know?
Well, he ran for mayor all the way back in 2023, vowing to champion Chicago's working people, and specifically those in the working class. And these are people who work at restaurants that are not fancy in downtown or Lincoln Park. And he relished this fight to say, look, I am standing up for Black women, for Latino women, who are often the ones who rely on tips to make up that minimum wage. And I think we're going to hear a lot about it as he prepares to run for a second term.
Of course. So while the city council put this issue on ice, at least for the moment, two other hot button issues did not get a vote today. What happened?
Well, there's an effort to speed the creation of video gambling terminals in bars and restaurants across Chicago. Supporters of that change want the city to step up efforts to get licenses once state officials sort of give the green light to those bars and restaurants. That was blocked from a vote today. Also blocked from a vote today is a measure designed to help CPD rid its ranks with officers who have ties to extremist and anti-government organizations like the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers. Both are likely to come back for a vote at the next city council meeting, but we'll have to wait a month for a final vote on those.
Okay, wow, because I know those are two issues you've been keeping an eye on.
I sure have.
We have it here at WTTW News. We'll hear about them later. Heather Sharon, thanks so much.
Thanks, Brandis.
And you can read Heather's full story on our website. It is all at WTTW.com/news. All right, and I think we're going to have more coming up in just a bit from our next panel. We're going to be talking about Chicago Public Schools and May Day right after this. Chicago Public Schools are expected to remain open on May 1st, or what's known as May Day, International Workers' Day. That is after a month-long public dispute between the Chicago Teachers Union and members of the CPS board. The union says teachers and students should be excused from classes to attend demonstrations, while the board and CEO Macklin King say students should remain in class. Joining us are Jennifer Custer, CPS board member representing District 1B on Chicago's northwest side. She is also running for board president in the upcoming election. And Bridget Doherty-Trebbing, a 26-year veteran art teacher at William Howard Taft High School and CTU executive board member. Thanks to you both for joining us.
Thank you.
So Jennifer, as a CPS board member, you've been very vocal about opposing canceling classes on May 1st, which would allow teachers and students to attend this day's demonstrations. Why do you feel that way?
You know, we put out a calendar at the beginning of the school year for parents, and they really rely on that. It's a form of stability. They know what to expect. They can plan around it, vacations, et cetera, et cetera. And now, seemingly, potentially 8 days beforehand, if the board votes to, we could overturn that and change it. And that really puts a big burden on our parents and on our families who rely on the stability of a school calendar to plan their lives with their kids.
Bridget, you feel otherwise. You think classes should be canceled so students and teachers can attend. Tell me why.
Yeah, I do. So, you know, May Day, May 1st, 2026, very important actions taking place around the country, in our city, internationally. Brandis, as you already mentioned, May 1st is International Workers' Day. Like, it's International Labor Day. So it's significant. It's significant every year. But in 2026, these are not normal times, right? If you consider the actions of the federal government, a tyrannical president, the impact on the working people of Chicago and the students in the city of Chicago. And so for us, this is, not about making it difficult to adjust the calendar, but we want our students to be able to participate in a civic day of action. And this is something that we've been discussing with CPS for more than the last 8 days. This was part of our contract negotiations, ongoing discussions, and we as a union are excited to be able to partner with CPS to make this an important day for all.
So CPS CEO Macklin King reaffirmed last Thursday that schools would be open May 1st, writing, quote, "My recommendation to the Chicago Board of Education for weeks and again during this week's Agenda Review Committee meeting has been to maintain May 1st as an instructional day for students. As a career educator, I believe every minute in the classroom is vital for our students." But we know that board members could vote to overrule that. Board President Sean Harden and others have pushed to cancel classes, leaving some parents and students still wondering, will Chicago Public Schools have normal classes on May 1st? What should people expect? Bridget, I'm going to come to you on that first, based on what you know, and then I'll come to you,
What we
Bridget.
should expect that we've been saying is that it will be a nationwide International Day of Action. CTU, again, is very committed to being partners with CPS. We've even made proposals that we could adjust and make the day look a way that works for everyone. Maybe it's a half day of attendance, maybe it's an afternoon of civic action. But I would say, as a 26-year veteran, we certainly do make adjustments to the calendar. It isn't moving mountains. This week, students, high school students, were doing ACT testing and pre-ACT testing. Schedules were adjusted. Some students were not in attendance. So that's not uncommon.
Bridget, excuse me, Jennifer.
Yeah, I don't know that we know what to expect yet. Dr. King had the sole authority to make this decision, and she could have done so without even consulting the board. All she had to do was maintain the calendar as it was approved by the board in previous years. So she could have just said, this is what we're doing, and this is how we're doing it. Instead, she did bring it to the board, and so now there is potentially the possibility that we may see this come up to a board vote. And then it would be the board having an agenda item that would alter the 25-26 calendar, and we don't know exactly what that might look like. It could be that it is, as we kind of had talked about in our closed session, a proposed professional development day for teachers, which would mean it's a student non-instructional day. And so we don't know, quite frankly. We're going to have to kind of wait to find out. We've reached the point where I think calling any kind of special board meeting, which I know she had, Dr. King had said once already, it's kind of a little late for that. So we are going to have to probably wait until the 23rd and see how this shakes out at the agenda.
So CTU, you all have your own itinerary, which calls for students and teachers to meet at school and then attend the rally at Union Park. What are members, Bridget? What are you all telling parents and students at this point who maybe aren't sure whether or not to expect class that day or to have to plan for something else?
Yeah, I mean, to be clear, there's not a CTU agenda for May Day, right? I mean, we are in coalition with hundreds of partners, other unions, community organizations. But yeah, we've put out a framework of staff members meeting at their schools, right? That's a way for school communities to come together. There are different regional events that are happening related to civic action, teach-ins that are happening near school communities. And then there is a rally in March convening at Union Park at 1 p.m., right? So that's the framework.
That's the plan.
And it's very similar to, if we remember, in 2016, we did a one-day action on April 1st, and the format is very similar to that day. We similarly met at our schools, regional actions, and convened on one large action downtown.
I do remember that, which would be different, though, because that was a one-day strike at the time.
True, and this is not a strike. Exactly. Correct. But as far as the logistics of kind of how we would envision the day, it's very similar.
Framework. Gotcha. So in a post last week, Jennifer, CTU claimed that they negotiated this day of action into the contract with CPS and that they've held, quote, countless meetings with CPS to discuss student preparations and troubleshoot challenges. Now, Dr. King has told the board that that's not quite the case with regards to the day and how negotiations have worked to land on this particular day. What is your response to the union's argument?
Yeah, so what we were told by Dr. King and by some other members of CPS leadership is that, yes, this was discussed during negotiations. However, it was said to CTU that the calendar was already set and it would require then a board vote to overturn that calendar, and so they were not going to discuss it for the 25-26 school year. But it was written into the contract that we could have a mutual day dedicated to professional development day that CTU and CPS agree on, and we could organize activities for May 1st beginning the 26-27 school year. So we didn't quite exactly get the same message that CTU is claiming. There were discussions, but they weren't entertaining those discussions as calendars were already passed by a previous board.
Now, Bridget, you all believe that CPS is in violation of the contract. Is that accurate?
Yes.
And that you're asking to swap a date, basically. There's a professional development date at the end, nearly the end of the school year, that you would like May 1st to be replaced with.
Yeah, that would be an easy adjustment. And I cannot stress enough how we're not in normal times, right? Like the urgency of such an action. We saw how powerful it was when there was a day of no work, no school, no shopping in Minnesota. And like the impact of that, because again, our families and students are being impacted by ICE. We're in multiple wars. Folks are having a hard time paying for gas. Folks are having a hard time paying for groceries, rent, property taxes. Like the impact of things that are happening at the federal level are impacting our students. And our students want to see teachers standing up and taking a stand.
Jennifer, CTU also argues that this is an important moment, as we've just heard from Bridget. These times call for increased political activism. What do you say to that argument?
Listen, you're not going to find an argument from me that May Day is an incredibly important day. I'm a union member, my husband's union member. We feel like these are really important values that we teach our kids in our household too. However, we're talking about a school district, and we need to have a conversation about what is the role of the school district. And for me and for many of my board colleagues, the role of the district is to provide children with an education, and that should be the number one thing that we're focused on. If we had had conversations about having curriculum or doing activities within the school day with these students, that sounds great. But what we're talking about is a major disruption to a lot of students across the entire city. We're talking about AP test prep, ACT makeups. We're talking about field trips that are planned all over the city. We're talking about college decision day, which is huge for a lot of our seniors. And this doesn't just disrupt those children, it disrupts their families. I've had countless emails from people telling me I'd have to take a 0 day. I'm not going to be able to find childcare for my children. Please don't vote for this. I don't know what I'm going to do if my child isn't in school that day. So for us, this is about the role of the school district and educating the students that we are tasked to educate.
Bridget, some of the items on the curriculum CTU recommends teachers use on May 1st. One of them is a lesson titled Things Donald Trump Did This Year You Might Have Missed, having students create TikTok videos on rising authoritarianism. Some critics are arguing, though, that this is more about, quote, indoctrinating students rather than educating them and letting them inform their own political views. How do you respond to that criticism?
I mean, the teaching of civics is a critical part of our school district. In CPS's own mission, we are preparing students for success in civic life. We have a civics graduation requirement. So current events, things that are currently happening in the world, being in service, democracy in action, that's part of curriculum. So when have we not taught about actions of presidents, what's going on in the government? That's not new, and we want our students to be well-informed, aware, and be critical thinkers.
Jennifer, a couple seconds left. Sole board member who voted against the appointment of Magewell King as CEO. You've been critical about her over this particular issue, saying, quote, abdication to the board of her authority has opened the door for Mayor Brandon Johnson and his allies to bring more uncertainty to Chicago families. That is in your commentary in the Chicago Tribune. What would you like to see differently out of Magewell King in about 20 seconds?
I want to see her stand on her own autonomy. I want to see her make decisions and stand by those decisions. And I really need to see, my vote was based on feedback from my community. I want to see her show up, and I want to see her show up everywhere and have conversations with stakeholders all across the city and what they're looking for their children's education.
Okay, that's where we'll have to leave it. Best of luck to you both as you navigate all of this. Jennifer Custer and Bridget Doherty-Trebbing, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brandis.
Up next, how the CPS school board is changing this year. Chicago voters will make history this fall. For the first time ever, the entire school board for Chicago Public Schools will be up for election. This follows decades of advocacy to eliminate mayoral control over the board, culminating in a 2021 bill that set the city on a path towards a fully elected board. Our Matt Masterson joins us now with more on what we should know. Matt, what is changing about the school board this year?
So this is the year it's finally going to be a fully elected school board. For the last couple of years, it's been a hybrid board after CPS started its first round of elections in 2024. Half the board, which was 10 members, were elected. The other half still appointed by Mayor Brandon Johnson, as was the board president position picked by Mayor Johnson. So he still had mayoral control over a majority of the board. That's all going away. This year, all 21 seats on the Board of Education are going to be up for grabs. So this is a massive change. These seats, these positions, they set the district policies, they set the district goals. They are in charge of hiring and firing the CPS CEO, both of which they've done within the last year and a half. They set the district calendar. So these are very important positions that Chicagoans will finally have a say in picking for themselves.
Yeah, something we know that many Chicagoans have been working for quite some time. How did we get here, Matt?
Right, it's been years and years. It was since 1995. The board has been under mayoral control, and bills have been brought repeatedly, year after year after year, trying to force an elected school board into Chicago. Chicago famously was the only city in Illinois without an elected school board. And parents, residents, the Chicago Teachers Union, they fought for this for a long time, saying that they were being denied a voice in the say of how this education system is run. It was the third largest, now the fourth largest school district in the country, and parents felt they were iced out from control on this. So the headwinds finally changed in 2021. Bill made it through the House, made it through the Senate, onto the desk of Governor J.B. Pritzker, who did ultimately sign it into law, bringing about the changes that we saw first with the hybrid board and now the fully elected board.
So what will voters see on their ballot in the fall?
So this fall, the district is going to be broken up into 20 sub-districts. The city is going to be broken up into 20 sub-districts, each of which is going to elect its own board member. Residents will be able to vote for their own one representative there. The board president is also going to be a separate election. That is a citywide race that's not tied to any geographic district like the rest of these seats. So voters will also have a say in that one. So voters will see 2 seats that they'll be voting on, the board president and their own local representative that they'll see on their own ballots.
And what do we know? Anything about who might be running for board president?
There's a handful of candidates so far. 2 current board members, Jennifer Custer and Jessica Biggs, are both running. Former board member Senthil Revelary has announced his campaign, as well as has a board member from Urban Prep, Victor Henderson. So there's still time for candidates to announce their campaigns, but for now there's only a handful of candidates running for that.
Okay, a few names we've heard before, so it should be an interesting race. Matt Masterson, thank you so much.
Thanks, Brandis.
And you can read Matt's full story on our website. It's all at WTTW.com/news. Chicago boating season kicks off today, which means it's time to open the gate. And by gate, we mean the Chicago Harbor Lock, which separates the Chicago River from Lake Michigan. It's right next to Navy Pier, and it's one of the busiest locks in the nation. Our Patty Wetley shares how this feat of engineering works in our latest edition of WTTW Explains.
Some pretty famous people have been given a symbolic key to the city of Chicago. And then there's this guy, the Chicago Harbor Lock Lockmaster. He controls access to the city's real front gate, so to speak. That gate is the Chicago Harbor Lock. a 600-foot-long, 80-foot-wide chamber that separates the Chicago River from Lake Michigan. It's the second busiest harbor lock in the nation, and it's right there next to Navy Pier. The harbor lock was built in the 1930s as part of the project that famously reversed the flow of the Chicago River. The whole point of that engineering feat was to keep wastewater out of the lake. But what about other floaters? Namely, the thousands of boats that travel back and forth between the river and lake every year. The lock manages that traffic, and not just to avoid gridlock. It's needed because the river is anywhere from 1 to 4 feet lower than the lake. So think of the lock as an elevator. Boats in the river are basically at ground level, and the lock gives them the boost they need to get to the lake. Here's how it works. Boats coming from the river line up in a holding area outside the lock waiting for signals. A red light means do not enter. Yellow gives government and commercial boats the okay to move into the lock, and green means go for recreational boaters. As many as 100 boats can fill the lock at one time. Once everyone's in position, the elevator operator, or lockmaster, shuts the gate behind them to cut off the river. Next, the gate to the lake cracks open. Lake water slowly fills the lock and boats ride up with the rising level. Once the lock is even with the lake, the gates open wide and boats exit into the open water. The steps are reversed for boats returning to the river from the lake. They ride the water vader back down to river level. The whole process takes about 10 to 15 minutes, and it's repeated more than 10,000 times every boating season. Another hard-working feat of engineering from the city that works.
And to watch more of our WTTW News Explains series, visit our website, WTTW.com/explains. And that's our show for this Wednesday night. Join us tomorrow night at 5:30 and 10. Now, for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, I'm Brandis Friedman. Thanks for watching. Stay healthy and safe, and have a good night.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a Chicago personal injury and wrongful death firm with more than 40 years of experience in medical malpractice.